Men of Reddit, what is something messed up that you're supposed to be okay with, because you're a man? The fact that a lot of men have no guidance, and are supposed to just figure stuff out or just know, yet, people will treat you like crap for not knowing. Getting weird judgment from others for not conforming to the traditional male role in a marriage or family. My wife is a highly driven genius, makes a great living, and loves what she does. I'm full-time in the arts, and I'm not completely dependent on her, but I don't have traditional employment or make a lot of money. I've had people in my life, especially older people, throw shade at me for not being ambitious enough, or not having a real career, but together we're doing much better than okay, and I'm probably gonna be the main caretaker if we have kids. I feel that if she were a man and I were a woman, nobody would question it at all. 30-year-old male from India, lost my dad 20 days back in an accident. Relatives and well-wishers spend time talking and pacifying mom/sister, and listen to them with patience. To me before they leave, now it's your responsibility to take care of your mom/sister, and nothing else. What about my grief of losing a parent? How do I handle it? Who is going to pacify me? Who listens to me? Without support from my wife and my friends, I could have gone insane the way people expect me to treat grief. Depression and loneliness, as much as I wish I could say the support gotten better, it hasn't. I see the Men's Mental Health Awareness Month BS all over social media for a day once a year, but then nobody speaks about it. Being depressed or saying you're lonely can often be seen as a cry for attention, or a red flag for partners. People on social media think posting some picture of, "We need to support our men in the world," is going help. It doesn't. If you legitimately care about the men in your life's mental health, please reach out to them and ask how they've been. Don't compare to them and don't undermine them. Just understand them. It does so much for them.
Women of Reddit, have you ever broken up with a man because of his schlong? If so, why? I have an unusual story for this. Over 20 years ago I was set up with a Guatemalan guy some friends of mine knew. We went out and I figured I would never hear from him again. He was way out of my league in the looks department. To my surprise he asked me out again. After a few dates we wound up going back to his place. We were making out and he said he needed to tell me something before we went any further. He told me that several years ago he had been in an accident and the tip of his schlong was cut off. It was still functional but he wanted to make sure I was okay with that before we went any farther. I told him I didn't mind, it was just a small piece of the tip that was missing, but instead of being rounded the top of his schlong was kind of jagged. Not really sure how to best describe it. Surprisingly, this actually made the fun time much more pleasurable. As we continued dating I learned he was in the United States to have plastic surgery to fix his schlong. It took 6 weeks to heal and once it was healed it looked completely normal. And sadly, fun time was just normal too. Not nearly as good as before, that along with the fact that after the surgery he kinda became an asshole led me to break up with him.
Am I the jerk for not telling my boyfriend that I have a child? I have been dating a guy for 10 months, it's getting pretty serious and we are even thinking about meeting each other's parents. The problem is that I never told him I have a child. She lives in Bolivia with my sister, and I haven't seen her in 11 years. I don't feel like a mother at all. I talk to her maybe 2 to 3 times a year, birthday/Christmas/important days. It felt right to not mention her, because she doesn't live with me, but we were planning to go to Bolivia to meet my family, so my daughter too. They do not speak English, so I'd try much be the translator. So, I decided to tell him that I had a child back in my home country but that it wouldn't change anything in our lives, that we could have our own family one day. He got super pissed off, told me I deceived him. He's been ignoring for a week now. Am I the jerk?
What is the strangest thing you've walked in on someone doing? Worked as a waiter in college. It was the late 80s. The third floor of our place was tiny, held 4 tables. Normally, for lunch we weren't busy enough to put people up there. Had a couple come in and request a table on the 3rd floor. When I brought the drinks, he told me to take my time coming back because his date had to run to the store for smokes. I come back about 10 minutes later and she is gone. This guy had a cell phone and it was the first one I had ever seen. I asked him about it and we talked for a few minutes about how it worked. He showed it to me and let me call my roommates so I could see how it sounded. I thanked him for showing it to me and went back downstairs. When I walked downstairs and my eyes got level with the floor, I glanced over at his table and I could see her shoes and knees underneath the tablecloth. He was in the middle of receiving head while calmly and patiently explaining to me how cell phones work.
I hope my husband understands that I did what I had to do to achieve the American dream. And by that, I mean a house with a white picket fence, a nice car, a husband with a well-paying job, and exactly 2.4 children.
What is a real animal that almost nobody has heard of? A shocking amount of people don't know that narwhals are a real animal. The tree kangaroo of New Guinea, yes, it's a kangaroo that lives in the canopy. Oh, the it's my favorite animal. I don't know if it's an animal that almost nobody has heard of, but it isn't very popular. He's awesome though. They got freakishly long middle fingers, big eyes, and they're endangered animals. They live in Madagascar. Look 'em up, they're awesome. They have recently discovered a new species of boa that still has a vestigial hip bones, and is a testament to the process of evolution in snakes. I'm always surprised when people haven't heard of the tardigrade, aka water bear, absolutely incredible animals. Nobody an atheist when the car start hydroplaning. I was hospitaled for 11 days with pneumonia. 2 months later massive brain bleed. 2 months later too massive. 1 month later ICU for 4 days because of them. Next week had a series of strokes over 10 months. Had cancer surgery same time, never once turned to God. Damn bruh, maybe you should have. People who sleep naked, why? It stops people from sitting next to me on the train. Remember once, when my dad gave me money to pay the electricity bill but instead I bought a raffle ticket for a brand new car. When I got home, I explained to my dad what I did and he beat the crap out of me. But the next day, when my dad woke up and opened the door, outside my house was a brand new car. We all cried, especially me, because the car was from the electricity company. They were there to cut off the electricity. My dad beat the crap out of me again. What's something you learned embarrassingly late in life? Although Mick Jagger's name was Mick Jagger, and people just never said his first name for some reason. I was like 22, working at a restaurant making myself a salad, and I asked the chef for bumps, and he stared at me for like 60 solid seconds, trying to figure out what I wanted. I explained to him I wanted bumps for my salad. I have all the rest of the toppings, but now needed bumps. Guys, my family told me croutons were called bumps my entire life. I called my dad that night and confirmed that bumps are indeed, actually called croutons. This is something my little sister did through high school. We're about 8 years apart, so we never overlapped in school. She's always been a straight A student, and I found out she worked extra hard because she wanted to catch up to me in school, so we could be in school at the same time. I almost cried. I thought that horses had toes until I was 22. I thought the hoof was a horseshoe, and the toes were tucked inside. How did I learn how wrong I was, you ask? I was walking past a cavalry museum and saw a horse statue and loudly remarked, "It must hurt so bad when they fold a horse's toes to put them into the shoe." Dozens of horse enthusiasts turned and looked at me with wild bewilderment in their eyes.
I framed the first letter I got as a police officer, from a woman thanking me after I'd supported her through her daughter's death. I passed it in my hallway every day for nearly 8 years before realizing the handwriting was the same as on the girl's death note. Shortly after her death, her cats fought over her corpse. The loser, hungry but beaten, went upstairs and leaped into the baby's crib.